What's up, Euro Football Daily? With the Champions League back on our screens, let's take a look at 10 of the most humiliating defeats in the competition's history. 10. Burned at the Bernabeu. The Champions League generally belonged to Real Madrid in the 2010s, with the Spanish Giants winning the competition 4 times between 2014 and 2018. No team had been quite as dominant in Europe's premier competition since Los Blancos themselves in the 1950s. But following the departure of Ronaldo and Zidane in the summer of 2018, the club found itself in crisis, recording their lowest goal tally in the league for nearly 20 years, losing at home to Levante and Girona and sacking 2 managers before rehiring Zidane with 2 months of the season left. And the game which arguably defined their campaign was a humiliating 4-1 loss to Ajax at the Bernabeu. Real went into the last 16 leg with a narrow 2-1 advantage. But despite the Dutch underdogs boasting the likes of Frenkie de Jong, Hakim Ziyech and Dusan Tadic in the form of his life, Los Blancos were very much fancied to take it. After all, they'd never lost a Champions League tie, having won the first leg away. But they were totally outplayed by Ajax, suffering their heaviest ever home knockout defeat in the history of the competition, with Tadic and Ziyech cutting through the defence with ease. Within 6 days, Santiago Solari had been sacked after just 3 months in charge, and Zidane was back in the dugout. 9. Apoel out of their depth. But Real have also dished out their fair share of hidings over the years, and a notable one came against Cypriot side Apoel in 2012. Against all odds, Apoel had reached the quarter-finals. They become the first team from their country to escape the group stage by finishing above Zenit, Porto and Shakhtar Donetsk, and had overcome a Lyon side containing Hugo Lloris and Alexandre Lacazette in the last 16. It's rare for a side from outside Europe's top 5 leagues to make the Champions League quarter-finals, let alone one from a country with a population over 7 times smaller than London. And despite Apoel's best efforts, they were made to look that small by Mourinho's Real Madrid, who were at the peak of their powers at the time. While the Nicosia club held out for 70 minutes in the first leg, they didn't muster a single shot and conceded 3 times in the final 15, giving Real a comfortable cushion going into their clash at the Bernabeu, which continued to be a rout. Although they scored twice in the second leg, Apoel were pumped 5-2, losing by 6 goals on aggregate, the joint biggest quarter-final margin in Champions League history. There was nothing to be ashamed of, but the Cypriot club were put well and truly in their place. 8. Sporting humbled. Back in 2009, Sporting Club de Portugal looked a pretty dangerous team. Coached by future national team manager Paulo Bento, orchestrated by young midfield prodigy João Moutinho and powered by the goals of Portuguese veteran Liaison, the Lisbon side have reached the knockout stages of the European Cup for the first time since it changed the Champions League, finishing just 1 point behind Pep Guardiola's Barça in the group stage. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich, their opponents in the last 16, were not having such a good season. Managed by the unpopular Jurgen Klinsmann, they went into the game having dropped to 4th in the Bundesliga after losing 3 of their previous 4 games and would end the season trophyless. Sporting understandably fancied their chances. However, form went completely out of the window for the tie, with Bayern showing their quality in devastating fashion. Franck Ribéry, Miroslav Klose and Luca Toni all scored as the Bavarians ran out 5-0 winners in the first leg in Lisbon, before following it up with an even bigger win in the return leg, tearing Bento's side apart 7-1 at the Allianz, ending up 12-1 winners over 2 legs. It remains the largest winning aggregate margin in the competition's history. Whilst it also spelt the beginning of the end of manager Bento in Lisbon, he was sacked at the end of the year after 4 seasons in charge. 7. Poch gets pumped. But humiliating defeats aren't exclusive to the knockout stages. There have been countless embarrassing scorelines in the group stages over the years, with the most recent being Bayern Munich's thrashing of Tottenham in London. Spurs have reached the Champions League final less than 4 months before welcoming the German Giants to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, while Bayern, much like in 2009, were not in the best form. Niko Kovac was just weeks away from getting sacked, and they had just scraped past Paderborn in the league days earlier. However, Spurs weren't in great shape themselves, and despite opening the scoring through Heung-min Son, were totally torn apart as the Bavarians put on a scintillating display. Robert Lewandowski put the visitors ahead on the stroke of half-time before Arsenal Academy graduate Serge Gnabry scored 4 in 35 devastating second-half minutes, with Bayern leaving the English capital 7-2 victors. An unfathomable thought to most Spurs fans at the time, Pochettino would suffer a similar fate to Kovac in the following months, with that defeat against the German champions kicking off a dismal run of 5 games without a win in the league, without a doubt his darkest night as a Spurs boss. 6. Murder at the Mestalla. Another damning home defeat came for Valencia back in 2004. Spanish champions at the time, Los had also won the UEFA Cup the previous season under Rafa Benitez, but looked significantly weaker following his departure to Liverpool that summer. His replacement, Claudio Ranieri, lasted less than a season in the job, losing nearly as many games as he won, and the visit of Internazionale in the Champions League was undoubtedly his lowest moment. The Inter side that entered the Mestalla that October even featured a front two of Christian Vieri and Adriano, as well as a midfield containing Cambiasso, Veron and Stankovic. And while the first half ended 0-0, they were devastatingly clinical in the second, putting 5 past veteran keeper Santiago Canizares, with Ranieri's side offering just 1 in reply. Valencia were knocked out of the group and ended the season 7th. Having made 2 Champions League finals at the turn of the millennium, they've reached as far as the quarterfinals just once since that defeat to Inter, and it was all the way back in 2007. 5. Down at the first hurdle. However, the 2000-2001 season was one to forget for fans of Internazionale. Their side finished the Serie A season in 5th, lost 6-0 to rivals AC Milan and were dumped out of the Coppa Italia by Parma. However, their most humiliating loss came right at the start of the campaign, in the 3rd qualifying round of the Champions League. The club's tie with Helsingborg should have been a formality, and Inter put out a strong team to face them, including Clarence Seedorf, Ivan Cordoba and Laurent Blanc, as well as promising youngsters Andrea Pirlo and Robbie Keane. But they underestimated their opponents badly, and even assumed at one stage they were playing a Danish and not a Swedish side, evidence of their lack of homework, and lost the away leg 1-0. Still, they expected to right that wrong in the return game at the San Siro, but were once again frustrated despite their supporters' best efforts to create an intimidating atmosphere for their opponents. They failed to find a way through for the entire game, and even when they were awarded a penalty in the 89th minute, failed to take their chance, with Alvaro Recoba seeing his effort saved. It would prove a defining moment for manager Marcelo Lippi, who left the club 2 months later. 4. Down and out in Paris. When Man United travelled to Paris for the second leg of their last 16 tie in March 2019, going out seemed like a formality. PSG had enjoyed a comfortable 2-0 win at Old Trafford a month earlier, and Paul Pogba's late sending off in that game meant that United were without their best player for the return fixture, while they had another 9 squad members missing through injury. This meant Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had to field a team with Eric Bailly at right back and Andreas Pereira on the left, and with 4 teenagers in reserve. The only outfield player on the United bench over the age of 20 was Marcos Rojo. Whilst PSG were missing Neymar, they still had a lineup featuring Mbappe, Di Maria, Verratti and even had Cavani on the bench. But after Romelu Lukaku latched on to a Thilo Kehrer mistake to put the visitors in the surprise lead on the 2-minute mark, the tie came alive. PSG replied quickly, but Lukaku scored again, this time taking advantage of an error from Gianluigi Buffon, and a ramshackle Red Devils side managed to hold the hosts at bay for the rest of the game. A controversial penalty in the dying moments gave Marcus Rashford the chance to be a hero, and United recorded a famous victory at the Parc des Princes, one that meant the French Giants went out in the round of 16 for the 3rd consecutive season. 3. Camp Nou Chaos. But that was only half as embarrassing as what went down in the Camp Nou 2 years earlier. PSG had put Barcelona to the sword in the first leg of the last 16, sticking 4 past them at the Parc des Princes, as well as notching up 10 shots to the visitors' 1. All they needed to do was not get thrashed in the away leg and they'd be through to the quarters. But even after being dominated for the entire match, PSG looked to have survived a scare, with a vital away goal from Edinson Cavani calming the nerves as Unai Emery's side sat back and absorbed the pressure of the Blaugrana. But we all know what happened next. With Barca still needing to score 3 goals to progress with 6 minutes remaining, Neymar went superhuman, scoring a free kick, a penalty and setting up Sergio Roberto's winner in injury time. But a side of their quality even at the Camp Nou should have never been getting beaten in such a fashion. The club was so scarred that months later they more than doubled the world record transfer fee to buy Neymar, a move which has so far failed to change their fortunes in Europe. 2. Ancelotti's Anguish. AC Milan may have won the Champions League twice under Carlo Ancelotti in the 2000s, but they also suffered some shocking defeats in the competition during that era. And whilst their capitulation to Liverpool in the 2005 final is a well-known tale, what happened to them a year earlier was arguably even more surprising. In 2004, they were the clear favourites to win the competition. They lifted the trophy in the previous summer, were running away with the Serie A title and had a young Kaká tearing through defences in his first season at the San Siro. The Brazilian netted an impressive brace against Deportivo La Coruña in the first leg of their quarter-final, with the Rossoneri taking a 4-1 lead into the return fixture in Galicia. However, Deportivo were no pushovers at the time, consistently challenging for the Spanish title and featuring such classy operators as Valerón. They butchered Milan at the Riazor, cutting through the legendary backline containing Cafu, Nesta and Maldini, and after going 3-0 up at half-time, finished the job in the second half, with Kaká, Inzaghi and Shevchenko unable to reply to their 4-goal haul. But after pulling off one of the all-time great comebacks, Deportivo would be knocked out by Jose Mourinho's Porto in the semis. 1. Bayern Bulldoze Barça. The third time Bayern are featuring on this list, and for the third time it involves them scoring 7 goals. And while it may have taken them 2 legs to do so against Barca in 2013, it represents perhaps the most shocking result in the competition's history. Bayern were a ferocious outfit at the time, featuring peak Robben and Ribery, not to mention Neuer, Lahm, Schweinsteiger and Thomas Müller all at the top of their game. Barca meanwhile was still widely considered the best club in world football, but entered the semi-final somewhat wounded, with injury to Javier Mascherano leaving the defence weakened and Leo Messi only just declared fit to play. The Bavarians ruthlessly took advantage in the first leg, with Müller bagging a brace in a 4-0 rout, and while they were less dominant in the return fixture at the Camp Nou, still kept a clean sheet and took their chances, running out 3-0 victors. It remains the largest aggregate margin of defeat beyond the last 16 in the Champions League's history, almost unfathomable considering just how good Barca were at the time. Bayern went on to win the treble and took even more from the Catalan giants that summer, hiring their former coach Pep Guardiola and signing midfield prodigy Thiago Alcantara. So that was our list of the 10 most humiliating Champions League defeats of all time. Have we missed any? Let us know in the comments, and if you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit like and hit subscribe.